Mother, a saint of the highest order. On the eve of the summer vacation of 1925, my very revered friend Ral Bahadur Pran Gopal Mukherjee, the Postmaster General at Dhaka, invited me there. Holding but as a bait the likelihood of hearing the exposition of the Bhagavata by two very learned Goswamis, and also meeting a Maji, who the Rai Bahadur added had impressed him very deeply, I did not give much thought to the Maji, but accepted my friend's invitation with some alacrity, as both the Goswamis he mentioned commanded great respect as sound exponents of the doctrine of the Bengali school of Vaishnavism. So I went to Dhaka, and a day or two after reaching there, I accompanied the Rai Bahadur and Gopal Banerjee, then the lecturer in Sanskrit at the Dhaka University, to Shahbag, a magnificent garden of the Nawab of Dhaka. The late Ramani Mohan Chakravarti, known subsequently as Bolanath, the spiritual husband of Ma Anandamayee, was then superintendent of the Shahbag Gardens. Ramani Babu was then living in a small building in the garden with his family. Ma Anandamayee and one of two other members were there, and there were two rooms in the building, one rather small, the other a little bigger. The shades of evening were gathering, and the extensive and carefully tended garden looked somber, owing to the tall and leafy trees, filling our hearts with reverence, while the sweet perfume of the numerous flowering plants nearby added a rare charm. We were given asanas, small-sized carpets for sitting on the floor. In the bigger room and near the door between the rooms sat Ramani Babu, while in the small room sat Mataji. She did not speak to any stranger, and questions put to her would be answered through Ramnal Babu. She sat partly veiled so that I could not get a full view of her face. No sooner had I taken my seat than I felt myself in a peculiar state of mind, of which I had had no previous experience, and the reason for which is yet a mystery to me. I had gone to see Mataji with hardly any preconceived notion, and indeed I did not expect to be very much interested. The state of mind which I speak is difficult to describe. In any case, I cannot give any adequate idea of it. All thoughts and ideas seemed to have vanished from my mind, and practically oblivious as I was of the surroundings, there was a sense of pleasure, a very great pleasure, arising from what I do not know. Almost as long as I was in the presence of Mataji, my mind was in that state. I left the place, however, with the Rai Bahadur, somewhat surprised at what had happened, and spoke to him about it on the way. He gave me the Sanskrit name for it. What struck me then, as it strikes me now, is that this was an experience which came, as it were, of itself. I should have regarded it as accidental, were it not for the fact that a similar experience came to me the next year in 1926, in the Nadia district, in the same circumstances, while I was sitting near Mataji, while the evening closed upon us. I was therefore led to think that on both these occasions, Mataji, for reasons best known to her, induced a peculiar state of mind in me, and since I found it very pleasurable, I felt attracted towards her. Thus began an acquaintance which her ineffable grace has ripened into a relation no whit less dear than the dearest in the world. By 1927, Mataji began to talk to all who sought her blessings, without the restrictions she had imposed on herself previously. Oh, for the glorious days we passed in her company then. Now she does not enter the dwelling rooms in the residences of grihastas, that is, householders or married families. And wherever she goes, she has to be accommodated in a temple, dharamsala, or ashram. But in those days, she came to our homes just like a member of the family. The ladies of the house would prepare their beds alongside that of Mataji, where they would sleep with her. But generally, sleep there would be very little, for there would be kirtan, and conversations with her till very late in the evening, sometimes even till the early hours of the morning. On those occasions, Mataji would listen sympathetically to all, sometimes speak of her own early experiences, and above all, by kindliness of speech, gracious looks, and sweet manners, inspire not only love and affection for her, but also faith in that presence which enveloped us and would protect us in all circumstances. We did not care to ask ourselves whether she was a Siddha Mahatma or an avatar, a divine incarnation. We felt that she was Mother and that we might depend upon her. Could we but be with her always in this life and hereafter, we thought we would be perfectly happy, and more we did not want. Thus it is seen that she made an assault upon our hearts, and they were hers before we knew it, and the intellect came into play much later. A couple of decades later, in February 1945, Mataji's bhaktas, the devotees at Bengal, made arrangements for celebrations lasting for a fortnight in view of her presence in their midst, and some sannyasis and sadhus traveled all the way from Benares and other distant places to attend the function. I met there a very learned Swami of the Sri Sampradaya who had come from Vrindavan. In the course of conversation, he asked me, "What do you think of Anandamayi Ma?" I replied in a non-committal manner, "The divine power seems to be manifest in her." The Swamiji said, "Mataji is certainly a saint of the highest order. We cannot, however, believe as we do in the Sastras, the Hindu scriptures, and agree with people who declare that she is an avatara, or that she is the Bhagavati herself." Another very old saintly person, widely recognized as a sadhu of high order, on the other hand, prostrated himself before Mataji, saying, "That was the universal mother herself, Svayam Jagadamba." When someone asked Mataji why she allowed him to fall at her feet, for at this his disciples were mortified, she replied, "Tell them that the feet of the Baba are always on my head." I am of the opinion that for us it is an idle and entirely meaningless discussion whether Mataji is an avatar or a Siddha Mahatma. While all other creatures come to the world in accordance with the law of karma, the avatars come of their own free will. Siddha Mahatmas, as is well known, are also free from Maya and come to the earth of their own free will, proceeding from their samskaras of doing good to the world. Some hold, however, that the difficulty of regarding Mataji as a Siddha Mahatma is insurmountable, for we have no information of any sadhana by her in this body. On this point, there is no room for any doubt. I have made inquiries for myself. The first occasion when Mataji was discovered to be in Bhava Samadhi was when she lived in our village, Astagram, and I have the evidence of reliable people, indeed of everybody living near about the place, that it lasted for 19 hours, during which she was, as it were, lifeless, so much so that ants gathered round her eyes. The different stages that she seemed to pass through after this came naturally and were completed within a short time, and also without any instruction whatsoever from any living being, indeed for some time in spite of the opposition of relatives. And all this points to the strange but incontrovertible fact that the various stages and forms of sadhana, or spiritual practices, and evolution took place automatically in her body without any active agency on her part. The theory that her siddhi has not been attained in this body but in a previous one does not seem either to be tenable, since she again said, "One who knows the Brahman becomes Brahman himself." This too, some hold, is not applicable to Mataji because, as she says, There has never been any question of knowing or not knowing, so far as she is concerned. This superconsciousness may be regarded as her very nature, svabhava. This diversity of opinion regarding her essential nature hardly touches Mataji, and her reply to those who ask her is, "What really are you?" And it hits, in my opinion, the nail right on the head, for she says, "I am what you think I am." In 1927, when Mataji was staying with us for a day or two at the Rajasi, the late Professor Aswini Kumar Mukherjee put some questions to her. In those days, Mataji used to have Bhava Samadhi, sometimes so deep that she seemed almost lifeless. Hardly could any respiration be perceived, and the pulse felt at the wrist was none. Sometimes again she would roll from one end of the room to the other, and on a particular occasion in 1926, I remember she moved forward and backward on a fairly large platform in the ashram of the late Balananda Maharaj. Her movements were so rhythmical and yet so awe-inspiring that I, for one, was reminded of the cosmic dance of Kali. Again, at times, Mataji would, in her trance-like state, utter sweet and sonorous stotras, verses, not, however, in the ordinary Sanskrit and with a preponderance of seed mantras. Referring to Mataji's deep samadhi, the Professor Mukherjee asked, "How do you feel when you are in that state?" I am afraid she will not answer such a question now. She tried then also to avoid answering, but the professor, old as he was, respectfully insisted, and Mataji then said, "As you sit in this room, you can see everything outside through the doors and windows, but when they are shut, you cannot. This body feels as if all its doors and windows were shut. Again, when you take a handful of mud and wash it in the water of a pond, you see how finely it spreads on the water. So, does this body feel?" I do not know what Professor Mukherjee understood, but to me the meaning was clear. I understood Mataji to say that she became inwardly conscious while her outward consciousness received a check for the time being, and she had a sense of expansion into the infinite consciousness. Then the professor asked, "Do you perceive the presence of any god or goddess at that time?" Mataji tried to parry a good long while, saying that gods and goddesses might be seen if one wished to do so. But the professor insisted, "Do you see them?" And Mataji finally said, "They were seen before." I understood, therefore, that she had passed from all forms to the formless. Thus must all seekers after truth and reality do before their efforts are crowned with success. In Mataji's case, there was never any effort. All the various stages came to her of themselves and as a play, not in order to attain anything. Mataji, at least for me, is one through whom shines forth in all its effulgence the infinite, and when I bow down to her, I bow down to Tat, it. At the same time, however, I am not blind, nay, I value very much the human kindness in her, her solicitude for the least of our comforts when we are with her, the sweetness of her speech and smile, the affectionate inquiry about our welfare. Call her an avatara if you like, or a Siddha Mahatma if you prefer. It makes no difference to me for all practical purposes. Is it a tiny tot that has been brought to her? See how her face beams. Does a school or college girl want to talk to her? How kindly she receives her. Can you be half as tender as she is to the sick and decrepit? And has anybody ever had elsewhere such a balm of sympathy at the loss of a near and dear one. Yet if you are tired of walking in the mazes of philosophy, in a few words she points out the way and you are thrilled with surprise and delight. Or if in your sadhana a knot has to be straightened out, seek her help and see what happens. Avatara, Siddha, Mahatma, whatever she may be, above all, she is the mother, ever tender, ever helpful, radiating love and affection. Her very sight purifies and ennobles. That expression shines forth, which I have used, reminds me of an experience. It was in 1926 or 1927 at Shabak, and I saw her on my way to my native village. It was about 9 a.m. She was sitting on a cot in a small room, and I was squatting on the floor. There was some ordinary conversation, and for a fraction of a second, I looked away from her. The next moment, when I turned to her, gone was the Bengali lady, and instead a resplendent form with light shining out of every pore of her body dazzled my eyes. I remember I asked myself, where is the third eye? On other occasions as well, I noticed similar transfigurations. It seemed to me she no longer has these transfigurations, nor does she have samadhi. Instead, she seems now to live forever on a plane difficult or impossible for ordinary people to conceive. Once she was asked in my presence whether those who are ever conscious of Brahman have dealings with people. Her reply was in the affirmative. I feel she is now like that. Sympathetic and tender she undoubtedly is, yet a mystery seems to envelop her. I feel she has traveled away from us, although I know that nothing can be more false than this. She once said, "Are we separate?" No, Ma, I know we are not, and in this knowledge is bliss, but I want to realize the truth of it and be always conscious of it. Were I to point out one characteristic which above all shines in Mataji, I would at once say non-attachment. She is kind, no one can be kinder. She is affectionate, no one can have more affection. She is sympathetic, and no one can be more. She is solicitous of our welfare. I have not seen greater solicitude in anyone. My young daughter-in-law was with her at Vinchakal for a few days, and every letter she wrote was full of description of what Mataji did for her, how she took care of her, so that in spite of her shyness, she was not in the least uncomfortable. Even now, when speaking of Mataji, her face lights up with joy. This is the feeling everyone has in the company of Mataji, and yet she is completely non-attached. Nay, it is to say because she is unattached that she can be so affectionate and sympathetic and kind. For a non-attached person, having no axe of his own to grind, is the fittest to be really charitable and kind. From this non-attachment again proceeds another peculiarity of Mataji. For nobody, whatever his character, seems to be unwelcome to her. Her patience, too, is inexhaustible. In Calcutta, I have seen her surrounded by innumerable people almost the whole day and far into the night. She had the same gracious demeanor throughout, and her kindly smile never left her face. People of all sorts and conditions come to her, and probably no one goes away without feeling, however slightly, the better for the visit. The next characteristic of Mataji that I would mention is her unwillingness to impose her will upon anybody. I have never known her to do so. She suggests and recommends. She says it would be proper to do such and such things under the circumstances, but with a fine delicacy of feeling, never insisting upon anyone to follow a particular line of action, both in matters earthly and spiritual. Indeed, the liberty she gives to all often makes us apprehend that there is not sufficient cohesion among her followers. This, however, does not trouble her in the least, for she is not out to form any new sect or party. On the contrary, all sects and creeds dissolve of themselves in her presence and under her influence. Mataji is absolutely without any sankalpa or motive. This may sound strange to ordinary mortals, to all those persons who let actions proceed from a purpose. When asked what should be done in future regarding anything, her habitual reply is Johoje. Wait for whatever happens. This is not putting off things in the manner of lazy men and women, but it means that she acts spontaneously on the inspiration of the moment. Frequently has it happened during her travels that railway tickets have been bought at her direction for places not very far, although her ultimate destination was far enough. Starting from Calcutta, for instance, tickets were purchased for Benares, where again, without interruption, the journey was continued to Delhi, and then in a similar manner to Simla. This kind of motivelessness I have noticed in other great saints as well. It is this want of purpose that makes Mataji's actions tantamount to the divine play Leela. And indeed, the actions of personalities like her make it possible for us to believe that the whole universe is the Leela of the Eternal. Mataji's way of bringing others to her point of view, if necessary, is also peculiar. I will give an instance. It is well known that Bholanath, her spiritual husband, would at times, like a stubborn child, insist on doing things that happened to come to his mind. In this, as in many other things, he was a veritable child, simple and frank, truthful and always anxious to help. Mataji, as is well known, would never directly go against his wishes. Indeed, on this point, as in everything else, she set an example to the most devoted of wives. On a certain occasion in my house at Rajhashi, Bholanath insisted that a goat should be sacrificed. I was in great difficulty, for I could never think of doing such a thing. As luck would have it, someone happened to bring a goat along, to the great joy of Bholanath. I spoke to Mataji without his knowledge, of course, and she said, "Wait and see what happens." I was extremely worried. Ma, in the meantime, lay down and seemed to go into sleep. Preparations were made to take the goat with suitable puja to a Kali temple. There was some delay. In any case, arrangements for the sacrifice were not made quickly enough, and when the party with the puja materials arrived at the temple, the priest said that the Dasami, the 10th day of the moon, having set in just a few minutes before, there could be no animal sacrifice that day. I did not think I was yet out of the woods, for Bholanath might have insisted on the sacrifice the next day. But to my great relief, he forgot all about it. And Mataji? What did she do? She sat up when the party had started for the temple. Neither by knowledge of the sastras nor by sadhana am I qualified to say what Mataji really is. To me, she is more or less a fascinating mystery, an attractive and elevating personality with infinity brooding over her. To know her is definitely blissful. Thousands all over India and abroad have now come in contact with her and have been attached to her. It is not at all likely that all of them will have the same idea about her. May we have regard for all of them, nevertheless, for truth is elusive and have many facets. Dull uniformity is not its hallmark. The man who sincerely regards Mataji as but a woman of extraordinary spiritual development is, in my opinion, more blessed than one who lightly talks of her as a divinity that has strayed into our world of dust and storm. The great thing is to fix our attention upon Mataji, her words and actions, not at all the sundry theories and legends that float upon the stream of popular opinion. I may even go further and say that we should beware of the legends. May the bliss of Mataji descend upon us all. May we all realize the truth about her. May we all be one in her infinitude. Jai Ma.